music that doesn't go anywhere special.
Anyway, welcome to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
And I'm Gelb.
And we're going to talk about games.
And especially asymmetric games.
Asymmetric games.
I think a lot of folks, I mean, the term asymmetric games might be familiar to some and might not be familiar to others. And I think what I think would be interesting is to understand a little bit more about what are asymmetric games, what makes good ones. And especially as somebody who's played a lot of asymmetric games or just games in general, why are they quite difficult when it comes to thinking about how one might design them? I'm personally quite curious about that. So I guess just to start off with, how would you define an asymmetric game, Dougal?
So it's really hard because asymmetry in real life is not really asymmetry in games. Asymmetry in real life is describing something that is generally unbalanced from one side to the other. And in a way, asymmetry in board games is kind of the opposite.
It's very
describing, well, in some ways, it is trying to find balance between two or more completely uneven play styles, play sets. And it's really difficult to properly define that down within board games because there are things like, for example, a classic deck building game where you start with the same cards, but as soon as I buy a card that you don't have, technically, I have an asymmetrical deck to what you have. I mean, it's not what we would usually describe as an asymmetrical game, though. A lot of them sit more on the thing of having very different mechanics or very different play styles, at least, between at least two players on the table. There are kind of some classic examples of this within gaming. And I want to go a bit further in this, even to the point where I would say, some people would argue against me, but I would say there's a lot of games like Twilight Imperium or even Eclipse, Second Dawn of the Galaxy, where you are playing the same type of game as someone else, but your alien race or anything plays completely differently than someone else's. You maybe have completely different goals, or you have a huge amount more of a certain resource than another player. I mean, you could argue that that is asymmetric, but I think in terms of what a lot of people within board gaming talk about, asymmetry actually has different mechanics.
Yeah, that's how I would probably try and define it, is that your moment-to-moment experience will probably be quite different to mine. But yet, even though we're kind of playing what could feel like two different games, they work together and they balance out each other. And I guess Hanefataffel is one I like to bring up and talk about.
Bless you.
But Hanefataffel.
Bless you. I couldn't know what's up.
The Viking chess game. Viking chess game, old game, but just fundamentally, that's, I guess, visually a little bit more easy to be able to see as asymmetric compared with something like a chess, because in Hanefataffel,
bless you,
you either are playing in the middle as one player, or you're starting from the edges. And if you're in the middle, your mission is to try and escape and to escape your king out. And and around the edges, it's to raid and to try and trap the person's king before they can escape. So each of you has different objectives, and therefore your gameplay looks quite different. And I guess another two-player game recently that I know we played is Ironwood, where there's also quite a difference in terms of vibe or material. But do you find that asymmetric games are more likely to have fans of that kind of sub-genre in a similar way to, let's say, abstract strategy, right? Or fans or detractors? As someone who fishes for what types of games people like, do you find someone comes in and says, I really love asymmetric games? Because I feel like it's not quite the same as someone who says, I really love or I really don't like abstract strategy or worker placement or something like that.
I mean, it's rare. Most of the time people will say, well, I love this game that is very abstract, very asymmetrical. I think, and we'll want to go, well, have you got anything like that? More than people knowing the kind of the asymmetry as a shorthand for what it is. I think as well, even within asymmetrical games as a definition, there's kind of subsets of that, which causes, again, a few issues with what that is. So we were talking about, say, Hanafa
Bless you.
and Ironwood, where you are on the same board, you do have different objectives, you do play differently, but actually, mechanically, what you are doing on a turn as your action is ostensibly the same thing. You know, in Hanafa
Bless you.
You are moving a piece. You know, that's the abstract nature of it. You are moving a piece, they are moving a piece. So you don't quite have true asymmetry with what you're doing with it. The same thing with Ironwood, weirdly enough, because yes, you have a completely different objective, what you're going for. You're mining, drilling knights, trying to create forges on the outside cities, or you are spiritual wood ninjas diving into forests in the center to discover totems and bring them back out. But what you're practically doing on your turn is you are both playing a card and then you are doing the action on that card. It's practically you were doing a very similar thing on the same board. I think those are what I would say is a kind of lighter asymmetry side of things. You then have
maybe like your objectives are different.
Yes, but
your movements might be different, but it's almost like the same family.
You are doing the same practical
core
action
elements.
You are playing a thing. I would also put something like possibly Castle Nightingale within that. There are another set of what I would probably call full asymmetrical games. These are much harder to find because I actually find as games, they're much, much harder to balance for creation side. These are things like Root, where you are playing as usually a woodland creature of some sort. Your faction is, in the base game at least, cats or birds or the Woodland Alliance, which is mice and things like that. Or you're playing as the Vagabond, who is a thief, basically running around playing an RPG while everyone else is playing area control game. But you actually, practically on your turn, do completely different things. Yeah. Completely different things than other people. I would also mention Vast, which has a very separate thing as well. You're all within a big creepy mansion, all doing different things, trying to stop other people possibly, or trying to do your own thing. There are a lot of those, or much less of those pure asymmetry games. But there's another form that has quite heavy asymmetry, in fact, that I think often isn't discussed in the same sentence, which I think should be, which is often called hidden movement games. This is one versus many games as well within that same bracket. This is one where one person usually is an antagonist or either usually a villain, sometimes not a villain, and the other person playing or people playing are either hunting them down or doing something else. With hidden movement, it's one player is placing things down to move through somewhere and the other people are trying to hunt them down, trying to figure out where they have gone. Again, they play very differently, usually, those sides to each other. And a one versus many game sits on a kind of similar thing where there is one person in something like, say, Nemesis, where one person is an alien, a bunch of other people are on the spaceship trying to deal with the fact that that alien is running around doing things. But practically, they are doing very, very different things on their turns to the point where they're playing two different games. And I know that that's being a big gold ramble, but essentially, I guess I'm getting down to the thing of, to answer your question, is what people often would ask for in asymmetry is what I would describe as the kind of root side of things. They're wanting something where I'm playing something completely different than everyone else is, but often on the same board. In fact, almost exclusively, I would say asymmetrical games are played on a board where people can see what is happening with different things. The interest in that is I can learn my faction. I can do something really interesting that only my guys can do. Yes, I also have to deal with your stuff that only your guys can do. But that's a really interesting mechanical thing that bounces off each other in a clever way. So I think people like that. What people don't like about asymmetrical games is often there's a complexity to it that isn't the same as another board game. If someone is playing a regular board game with me and they need help with a rule or with what they're doing, well, I can answer that for them. I can help them with it. I'm playing the same game. Yeah. I have the same rules. If someone en route is asking me, well, what am I doing at this point? Well, one, I'm not doing a different game, but two, there's a competitive nature to an awful lot of asymmetric games that means that you're less likely, the more you help them, the more you're undercutting your own strategy with it, which can be difficult in a longer form, because most asymmetrical games are longer form sort of game that you're playing and can be a bit difficult to go, well, I'm gonna help you out here because I know the game really, really well and I do know all these factions, but it's gonna probably ruin me, and that's the next 3 hours that will go badly because of the nature of games. So
when thinking about if someone's listening to this and they're curious about getting into asymmetric games or they want to try one out, Root is talked about a lot, and obviously talked about it today. What are some other good asymmetric games that maybe on the light side or on the heavier side that folks should look into if they want to try it? Because I will say that also one of the big benefits of asymmetric games is that means, like, as an owner of a game, you could play differently each time you play. So, if you're wanting more varied experiences throughout multiple playthroughs, you could argue that allows for a much more simple way of achieving that. So which come to your mind as really good starter asymmetric games for people to check out?
Well, I always think if you're just getting into asymmetric games, Root's art is beautiful and fantastic and drags a lot of people into it. But its rule set is very, very difficult to learn. So I would always say if you want to get into asymmetric games or at least learn how they work in some way, then the 2-player asymmetrical games are always where I would start. We've talked about Castle Nightingale before, a Bruno Cathala game, where you are playing a very clever little deduction game against the other person. I would also put Fugitive into this, one of Fowler's games. Tim Ferriss games, which is very, very clever. One person is a fugitive, kind of using maths, I guess. Not really. It's not heavy maths at all. But they are placing down hideouts, trying to get from 0 to 42. Every next card has to be played within 3 numbers of the previously played card, but they're always played face down. And you can extend that by putting other cards underneath it. The other player is playing as a marshal, trying to kind of figure out where they're going.
Summed up well.
Thank you. But basically you are... Oh, God, I just got that. So sorry to everyone.
Come into my web.
But basically you have that asymmetry of playing a different thing than the other person, but you are not really reaching for a rule book. You're not going, wait, how does this work? On a slightly kind of heavier thing with it, where you would have to look into the rule book the first couple of times, I would heartily recommend Kelp. Kelp is a game where one person is playing as a shark, and one person is playing as an octopus, and the shark is trying to hunt down and eat the octopus, and the octopus is trying to hide from them. But instead of being played with cards or anything else like that, you're actually, the octopus is playing kind of a longer form card game. They start with a small amount of cards in their hand. They can usually play them as actions, but they'll be buying more cards and, more importantly, more tiles from the board, because they have small, almost domino style tiles that are faced away from the shark player. So the octopus player can see what they are, but the shark can't. And to do an action by playing a card, usually the octopus has to reveal what one of those is. So put one of those dominoes face up, so now the shark knows what it is. But they will get extra abilities. They'll be able to maneuver these dominoes around, re-hide them and shuffle them about, trying to hide whichever one that the octopus is, which is one of those dominoes. Whereas the shark is playing a dice game. They're taking dice out of a bag, they're rolling them, they're placing them on the board to kind of move around and search and strike certain places, and then discarding or putting some of the dice in an energy space to buy more dice and more abilities, growing over time. But every strike that they do wrong or every new card that they buy, they end up having to drop a dice in a hunger track. If the hunger track goes to the top, the shark is too hungry and they lose the game. Whereas the octopus can win by either starving out the shark or by getting food and eating that themselves. It's a very clever game, whilst also being actually quite quick to play. And I think that's a benefit of the two-player asymmetrical games, is often they have a speed to them that means that it helps you through getting through any rules difficulties that you might have when learning it, because you know, oh, well, my turn's just this, and then it's their turn, and then it's back to me. So things like that. I think you go a bit more complicated with Ironwood. Again, I think it's a really good example of asymmetry without being completely crazy, because you know, well, all I'm doing is playing a card. And I also think it's incredibly well designed to teach you the game with everything written on your player board for what you were doing. But actually, I think my go-to ones for ease of access would be Mysterium. Often people don't think of this as an asymmetrical game, but it's essentially a cooperative Cluedo where one person plays a ghost who has been someone who has been murdered, and everyone else is doing a seance to figure out who has murdered them. There's a bunch of people cards, there's a bunch of place cards, there's a bunch of murder weapon cards out in front of things, but the ghost is not allowed to communicate with the players by talking. They simply have to give them weird dream cards, which are very, very atmospheric, but very ethereal. Strange things. Like, yeah, very ethereal. There's a polar bear with a balloon riding a bicycle in the background of a Clockwork City, and you have to give that to someone. And that is going to tell them that they're meant to focus on the golfer. Like, it's really hard, but it has this wonderful thing where people will be guessing under a certain time limit. The ghost is going to be giving out cards, and you do have that asymmetry, two very distinct play styles that are being played differently with the same goal. So I think that also helps in asymmetrical games, is having a similar goal or a co-op side to it, where it means then you are that will help you learn through the game. On the other more complex side of things, Nemesis I still think is great. Fantastic game where one person is a big alien. We talked about it earlier. And that one just plays well and takes a decent amount of time. I would also say Treasure Island plays really, really well. One person is a Captain Blackbeard who has hidden their treasure somewhere on a board. Everyone else is trying to hunt down that treasure. But and Blackbeard will be giving clues every turn, which might be lies or might be truths. The board itself is huge, and you're actually going to have your own little player boards, and it's a wipe clean board where you're going to be using whiteboard markers to draw different colors on the board itself, draw circles around things, try and narrow down the search. But the more you narrow down the search in an obvious way, the more other people are also going to know, and there's only one winner at the end of the game. If Blackbeard gets to 9 turns usually, they will then escape and they will try and hunt down the treasure. So it's who gets the treasure first. Do you want to give people real information or fake information? Has some wonderful back and forth to it, which is great. I would also say Terrorscape on the one versus many side of things, which is does a fantastic thing of kind of oppositing. That's a word. Yep. Oppositing Opposing. The usual. Yeah, sure. The usual way of playing a one versus many game, where in Nemesis, you're the alien and you're moving around the board trying to hunt down people. But you know where those people are and they have no idea where you are. So they have a consistent fear of what you are doing, but you get the very basic, straightforward thing of, I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. Maybe a bit tricky at times, but it's a little less... it can be a little less engaging at different points. Whereas Terrorscape, there is a killer and there's a bunch of people in the house trying to do things, start up generators, whatever they need to do. But the people in the house are the people who see what the killer's movements and things are going to be. The killer has no idea where the people are. So they're actually trying to hunt them down. You still get the paranoia side of stuff going, oh God, they're coming for me. Oh no, this is going to be really badly. And they're very strong and it's all going horribly for the people in the house side. But it also gives the killer a thing of actually trying to hunt without having that full information that's there. That I think is very, very clever. Did I mention Siberian Manhunt? Siberia Manhunt's a great 2-player game, again, playing very, very differently. One person running across Siberia trying to escape, very fugitive style, and one person playing, I think it's ostensibly the Russians in the 1980s with a bunch of helicopters, and trying to find them before they can escape. Really, really, really clever. If we're going into more of the hidden movement stuff, you can talk about Fury of Dracula and Letters from Whitechapel and things like that, but it is a very focused version of asymmetry compared to something like, again, I would heartily recommend Vast, which is a very clever game where you're playing within usually a mansion. I'm pretty sure it's a mansion in the first Vast. You can play as a group of skeletons, or you're playing as a big evil spirit that is trying to swallow up everything in there. It's genuinely very, very clever.
When thinking about then what makes a good asymmetric game, then you were talking earlier about the balance and how it's hard to do asymmetric games well. And you just rattled off a whole bunch.
Sorry, that was way too many.
No, that's fantastic. But I imagine that there are also a category of games that don't quite work. Like they're trying a certain thing, they don't quite work. Obviously, don't need to go through them, but I'm curious about why is it so hard to get something that really kind of sings, more so than other types of symmetric games.
Yeah, so it's balance within unbalance. And I think that is a really tricky thing because you're not designing one game.
Yeah.
You're
layering multiple
games. Yeah. You are making multiple games. And there's some issues when that comes to what is perceived as balance within those. Sometimes that can be very, very tricky. There's a recent game called Harrow County based on a comic book series that I really like, that there is a really clever game and really, really good, but it can feel like there is an overwhelming chance for one faction to be better than another. Now, that can be different people's experiences based upon how well the player has taken on the rules compared to another player that they're playing with. Or it could be, well, actually, that one's a bit stronger. A lot of those are taken, if we go back even to the old Ankh-Morpork game, which is fantastic, very clever, very straightforward to play as well. Everyone has different defining goals and can play cards a bit differently and things like that. There is one character that wins the game if you manage to go through the entire deck of cards. Now that is seen online as the strongest character because you're probably going to go through the entire deck of cards. But if you play against that, that is where you can actually win against that faction quite straightforwardly if everyone in the group is doing the same thing. I think that is your major hurdle with designing an asymmetric game, is everyone has to play against what the other people are doing. But you are not using their rules or their mechanics. You are using your own ones, but you have to be incredibly aware of what they can do in anything except a cooperative asymmetric game. Because even in Root or Cthulhu Wars, for example, if you are not restricting them and gaining something, then when you gain something, they might gain more because their faction might be better at gaining things than yours. And that can be a really, really difficult thing to balance or to make work, particularly when you are doing completely different mechanics against each other. It's where balancing within a symmetrical game is so much easier. It is one game, it's still hard to do, don't get me wrong. There can be random cards that come out and there's some luck side of things that can just go not your way, and then it feels like, oh, that was unbalanced, I had no chance in doing that, or no chance in winning, or no chance in really taking part in it properly. Within an asymmetric game, you also tend to have a luck side to things as well, but you are also
different level
because there's other people's luck involved, but there's other people's gameplay involved, and it's where things like, at least Root is, within its asymmetry, is incredibly deterministic. There is not a huge amount of luck with event stuff coming out. There can be with different characters, but usually it's sitting on I know I can do this, use this resource to get this. At least I have something fixed within it. And I think that's where the difficulty, but probably the thing I would suggest for anyone trying to design an asymmetric game is to have certain fixed points within the design. Things that people know, if I do this, I gain this. Because once you have that in place, well, then it is balancing those gains against other people's gains, as opposed to a luck-based element where things can go from bad to worse. And I think you can have certain parts of those games mean within the first half hour, you've done something wrong. Therefore, you're not going to win at the end of 4 hours. And you know that, and there's nothing you can do about it, but other people are still having fun, so you kind of got to stick with it. So it's a really hard thing to do. I think it's why asymmetric games that work are so popular, because they are really fun and they are doing a little magic trick, and it feels like you can see that trick happening. You know, you can see how does this, oh my god, it was so close, even though I'm doing something completely different than you. At the end of the game, I just needed this and I didn't get it, but you did. And that, like, it feels like a very special thing is happening. And the fact that that can happen every time you play is really, really engaging and really interesting and very, very hard to do from a design perspective.
I mean, I also think that sometimes you can go off the other end. Like, I enjoyed Ironwood. I did feel like it was balanced to within an inch of its life, though. Like, and maybe it was just because of the way I played it. I think I played it twice or maybe 3 times, but it very much felt like it was quite tight, which is good in some ways, but it also makes you not, or at least made me not think there was a huge amount of flexibility in terms of the play, or every single move was actually quite important, which is a good feeling, but it's also like oh crap, I don't want to screw this up because then I will be behind. And I had wondered whether or not that was down to an intentional, like, tightness of the expected gameplay, or if it was a result of the fact that they were trying to make certain asymmetric elements work well together. I know, as you're saying, it's a lighter asymmetric game, but I don't know. I noticed that, and I wonder how often it is that asymmetric elements, when included, actually pushes you towards a more tightness with the actual game interaction, which is not necessarily a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but
I think so. If you're wanting something at least which has like longevity, there is something about that balance and that importance of an action that probably needs to be there. If it's not, then you have the random aspect to it that can break it really quickly. And that can be a lot of fun to a lot of people. And please, anyone listening, do not get this wrong. I have an opinion here. I love my balanced games. I think they're fantastic. I know, right? Shock. But no, I realize there's a huge subset of other people who are like, no, I love this big crazy thing happening that I had no idea it was going to happen. And now I've lost the game, but I could have won, but it was cool at least. Like, I find that really difficult to deal with personally, because I think that there is something about, in a competitive game, always being competitive. But I do think if someone is making a very good asymmetrical game, it can be inherent within the design to be very tight within that balancing, because you want to be able to give everyone a chance. You don't want one person on the table to be like, well, my squad just wasn't as good as yours. You need to have that ability to at least see where you could have won, even if you couldn't. And I think that can be a very... Whenever I talk to people about Root or Cthulhu Wars as well, which I happily mention, I think it's fantastic. It's very silly, but it's fantastic. You are playing to stop someone else's overpowered nature. It's generally not overpowered. It's just not what you can do. It's what they can do. So it seems more powerful than what you can do. So it's whenever, again, talk about Root with people, well, oh, the cats won the first game. Well, then the birds won the second game. And you know why the birds won the second game? Well, because everyone was focused on the cats who won the first game and went, well, we can't have that happen again. Yeah. Let's push against this. So it's a balancing act. It's a push and pull that is with deep within every asymmetrical game that needs to have some sort of balance, because the ones that don't, they get dropped really quick. If one faction keeps winning all the time, nobody wants to play that. Why would you want to do that again? So yeah, I think I have the utmost respect for anyone who makes a good asymmetrical game. I think it's ridiculously hard to do, but it's also the game that I probably want to play more than any other game, because I can see this fact, I get to play like this, or I get to play like this, and it's different, and I can still have fun with it and see this magic trick of interactions between different players, for sure. Yeah, so that's asymmetrical games. It's an awful lot. But we have come to the weekly segment that we always do. That's it. It's time for Dr. Games and the Multiverse of Madness. Hey, Gelb, what have you been playing?
It sounds super boring, but it's Archduke, and it's just comfortable. It's fun. It's easy to get people started with. I love a little bit of memory aspect of it. I also love the fact that, like, I know it probably makes sense to someone, but the theme does not make sense to me. And it's like, how can we shoehorn the weirdest, to me, the weirdest theme onto what's a lovely game? It makes it look beautiful. I don't see where the dots were connected in terms of trying to get a memory card game and somehow talking about crossing the desert with cool little things, and also calling it Archduke, which of course brings up expectations that it has something to do with World War I. Has nothing to do with World War I.
That's not what I thought, but I'm interested that that's where your brain goes. I think it's also, it always in my head looks like a kind of space sort of thing. I don't know why. I think it's kind of the
it's
dark,
like Monument Valley-esque.
Sure.
Like that kind of
but yes, it is called Archduke, and that's really weird. But you do get to shout Archduke, or at least say Archduke with victorious feelings.
Palapalooza. It could have been called Palapalooza.
Could have been called anything.
Right?
But again, a really great game. Also, the idea that the cards have weight is a big part, and you want the lowest weight.
But they're just numbers.
They're just numbers. And you know what? Every time I play it, it's a card number game.
Yeah,
and it's called Archduke, but I don't really connect it to a theme.
Yeah.
But not every game needs to have a very distinct theme. Just so I really enjoy it.
But what went through their minds in terms of trying to connect this with that? And I just, every time I play it, I think this is an example of a game where if you really wanted to theme something, anything, you can make it work. Usually you can make it work. None of the mechanics to me make a huge amount of sense. They're connected with with thinnest of string, and it doesn't matter because it's still really fun. It's beautiful, and it allows you to screw with other people in a way that doesn't feel unfair. It feels a nicely balanced screw.
Yes.
Like an
M10.
Like I was gonna say an M5, but an M10. Okay, like an M10. For those of you who don't know that, look up what an M10 is.
It's actually a bolt. Sorry, Gelb.
Is it a bolt?
Yeah, I think
M10?
It's a bolt instead of a screw.
S10?
You do whatever you like. Sorry.
How about you?
I've been playing two incredibly disparate games. I've been playing Sea Salt and Paper, which is
very fun.
Really fun. You played Sea Salt and Paper?
Yes, I have.
Great. Lovely little game. Origami bits on the cards, but the cards themselves, don't fold them. It's where you are kind of collecting different sets. Don't fold the cards. You're collecting different sets of cards. You're discarding things into two different discard piles, but you can take things from discard piles. When you see your opponent take something from the discard pile, you know they're collecting that set of things. You can play down pairs to get little extra actions. They'll also count as points at the end. Has a really weird but very entertaining kind of end point to the round of going, you can either go, right, we're stopping, and then everyone gets the points that they built, or you go, you've got one more turn. I bet you don't have more points than me. And then they play one more turn, and if they don't have more points than you, then they don't get to score anything at all, I think, or at least very, very little. And you get to score loads, but if you were wrong and they do have more, you only get to score very, very little, and they get to score their full amount. So it's got this very clever kind of push your luck element to it, because there are 4 mermaids in the deck, and if you get all 4 of those mermaids out, then, or someone gets all 4 of those mermaids mermaids, they just win the whole game. You don't play any more rounds, they just win. So you've got to always choose the right time to end it. I find it really hard to do that because I just want one more card to collect that set, just finish that one off. So I've had a great time with that, and I think it plays really well at 2, but the base game plays up to 4 as well, which is really good. And they've done a great thing with their expansions of here's more sets, and you just shuffle them in. Great. Mm-hmm. And then the other one I've been playing is a big, silly game called The Great Wall. It's not silly, it's very serious. But it's one of those, this is sit down, bunch of miniatures, let's play whole big things, where you are all kind of different clans in this kind of semi-fantasy version of building the Great Wall of China, where it has such clever little mechanics, where you have to play down cards, and you will flip them over, and you might have economic versus diplomatic or things like that. But if someone else plays a card of a certain type, you might get a bonus or they might get a negative based upon things. And then those cards go in a discard, and at the end of the round, you can choose to leave those cards in the discard and they'll be worth honor, so victory points essentially. Or you can take them back into your hand so nobody knows what you're going to choose next time. So the more cards in your discard, the more points they're going to get you, but you become more readable as what you're going to do. And there's a worker placement element. I love me some worker placement where you're placing your workers, your clerks, in fact, down on different spots, but those spots often won't activate until it's completely filled with clerks from different people as well. If you do it all yourself, it goes horribly wrong. So what can happen is when you're taking your turns, you can go, go on there because I'll definitely go on there, and then we'll get the thing, and then you cannot go on there. And it's a tasty morsel because you end up like really messing with people. You've also got to build the Great Wall. You've got to deal with Mongol hordes. So there's kind of almost a semi-cooperative element to it. But if the Mongol hordes take over and you haven't put a soldier into that bit, then you end up getting shame, and that's really bad. There's a lot of bits and pieces going on with this, but it's delightfully put together. There's some wonderful cardboard versions of the Great Wall of China basically being built on the board as you were playing. There's some lovely little extra bits and pieces that come with it, but it is also a lot of cool miniatures and a lot of other things going, and it took us kind of 3.5-4 hours our first game. So it's a big silly game that I had an awful lot of fun with and think is very, very clever. But I enjoyed both of those games, Sea Salt and Paper and Great Wall, probably about as much as each other.
That's cool.
But the amount of time I spent playing Sea Salt and Paper was much less, and played several rounds of it, whereas the Great Wall was a long experience of joy where I did lose. But I will let go of that. I promise. If you got any problems, you got any queries, if we didn't talk about your favourite game and you want us to, if you are having a date and you need help as to what to play on that date and where to play,
I am totally up for that.
Gelb is up for that. But if you already have someone else planned to go on the date with, please let us know your questions, queries, anything else you want to say at ancientrobotpod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I am Gelb.
And this has been recorded and edited by Ryan Scott. If you liked this, or didn't...
Even if you didn't,
please let us know in the comments or via email or Pigeon, if you got Pigeon.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like us, drop us a line. And if you don't, do this really, really cool thing where you press follow or like. It actually works against us. So we'll still get the message.
Thank you very much for coming and listening with us, and we'll hear you next time.